We're recording.
Welcome to the City of Eureka Springs Planning Commission workshop. Today is Tuesday, May 9th. We are doing a workshop on, well, it's kind of just an update on economic development here in Eureka Springs. So we've got a couple individuals that are here that are going to be presenting or answering questions. I've got Sandy and I've got Ken. Kent, okay, I thought it was with a T. So I've got Kent Turner and Sandy Martin here. We did get some information that Kyle sent out to us in advance as far as what the economic development group has done over the past few years. I know Megan's not here. Megan is the one that initially talked to you. She has since resigned from the Planning Commission just because of things that are going on in her household. They've sold a home and they're moving elsewhere. But I think what we were hoping to do when I originally talked to Megan about this is that we were trying to find out if there was any way that the Planning Commission could assist with some of the projects that you had going on, and more specifically to like ordinances. We've got one of the topics on our agenda right now, which is our floor area ratio and how that allows us to calculate, possibly in a different way than we have in the past, what size home could be on a particular size lot. So rather than, us sticking to you have to have a 10,000 square foot lot or you have to have an 8,000 square foot lot in a residential zone, if we end up with a 3,000 square foot lot, what kind of house can we put on that? Do some of our residential lots, neighborhoods allow for two houses on that particular lot? So that's kind of the way that the discussion, I think we were leaning towards as far as what this workshop could be. I do appreciate that you gave us all of this information for us to look over, but I think that's kind of the way we want to lean more on this particular project. Kent, I know you did the paperwork for the 501c3, and maybe we can just figure out where you two are at and what you think planning could do to assist you and create some new opportunities here in Eureka that aren't currently available to people when it comes to housing because of the way our code is written. So, does that help you?
Yep, absolutely. We can answer that. And thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity, and Mayor Barry's here as well. As far as the housing goes, I gave Kyle a couple of jump drives that have a whole bunch of information and research that we've gone through, with a whole bunch of information on it. As regards to ordinances, there probably will be some. I know that Mayor Berry is looking at annexation because, as you know, we're landlocked, and trying to find land that is buildable. That's part of the Community Development Corporation's purpose as well, is to attract people to donate land or to get enough funding to be able to purchase land to do it. That's a golden opportunity to set some ordinances in place under that 501c3. That would be very, very helpful to do. With the annexation, if and when the mayor is able to do it, there might be additional residential ordinances that could be done that might layer something with affordable housing, restrictions as far as rent cap, those kinds of things that could be included with it. We're a ways away from that right now, but that's a possibility.
So right now we have quite a bit of land that is sitting, I don't want to say sitting, it's probably owned right now, but we have quite a bit of land that's in R3 zone that is listed as agriculture, which I think, Kyle, we had this conversation. Why is it called agriculture? And I guess it's because it just wasn't zoned anything specific. So if that is correct, then there are some opportunities where it could be rezoned without having to annex any land, but use what we currently have in R3 and maybe some other areas. I don't know. We haven't gotten into it that deep yet.
You're talking about city-owned property?
City-owned property, yeah, that's on the map.
Space?
That is currently on the map.
That way?
I'm going to go to that next agriculture.
There's quite a bit in R3. Okay.
The reason they zoned it agricultural.
You want to come up to the mic?
The reason they zoned it agricultural, and they may have changed state law since then, is that whenever you annex property into the city or you zone it the first time, it automatically zoned agriculture.
Okay.
And then from there, it develops
can be-
into whatever zones the planning commission wants.
Okay, so it sounds like we do have the opportunity to rezone or reclassify some land
Right.
if it's listed as agriculture at this point.
Now, at one point, this is several years ago, the, I'm going to call it modular home industry, got involved, and they wouldn't let you ban modular homes. So each city had to have a spot allowing modular homes.
I think we have one.
And we decided at that time we'd put it in agriculture. And the only places I knew, and I had to go back and look at the zoning map, I don't know where the other spots are. I knew there was some out north of town.
Well, I know there's one mobile home park
No, I'm
zone.
talking about agriculture.
Well,
there is-
if you look at the big map and you look in R3, wasn't it R3, Kyle? It was R3, wasn't it? That it had the most agriculture listed.
It's been a minute since I've looked at that.
Okay. But regardless, we can look at the map.
Yeah, no, we do have, but that was grandfathered in. And we do have a few mobile homes that are grandfathered in.
Okay.
But once they leave, you can't replace it with another mobile home. I think there's at least two up on East Mountain.
So that's done by ordinance?
They're just grandfathered, yes.
Okay.
Because we didn't want mobile homes inside the historic district, actually inside the city limits.
Okay. But that wouldn't apply to the mobile home park that's currently there
Because
or
it's
any?
grandfathered in.
Grandfather, yes.
Okay. But it wouldn't apply to any new ones, would it? Or is it
No.
just, okay,
Now, that's the reason we allowed mobile homes or modular homes in the agricultural district.
okay, okay.
Because you have to have a spot for modular homes.
Yeah.
The mobile home industry got real upset because all the cities were banning mobile homes.
Okay. Okay.
Butch, I know sometimes, when I was a park commissioner, we got donated acres of land during the bike trail by the Waltons. Is that how many, I guess, is that got a kind of a note, if you ever use it other than bike trails, you can't keep it? Is that part of that deal, or is there?
Part of Lake Leatherwood. I think
Yeah,
that's-
so, okay. So, but I mean, is there other parts of land that are kind of like donated that have a specific use that we use it for something else?
Not that I know.
Oh, good. Okay. That's what.
And with the, do you want to know more about the 501c3? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
With CDC, the purpose of that, I'm one who believes you shouldn't reinvent the wheel, okay? The first place I went was Bentonville Bella Vista Community Development Corporation. They've got an excellent one. They've got an excellent website. It has been in effect for a long time, so it's very big. But they've done the job right. And with the CDC, you can do multiple things. People can donate money to the CDC. People can donate property to the CDC. And the city can actually deed property over to the CDC. You can also act as a construction manager for projects, okay, which gives you a little bit better control than if you've got some outside. The first thing that I want to do with the CDC is we get the board in place, which I haven't gotten in place. It's hard to find board members for anything, and I have a special request for this group here in a few minutes, is bring the president of the CDC, Bentonville Bella Vista CDC, and have him spend 2 or 3 hours with that organization telling us what didn't work for them, what did work for them, because they have all of the same problems that we have. They had land that wasn't zoned correctly. They had places that could be used, but it wasn't, nobody had used it. You had people that literally, in their case, literally wanted to give land, and there was no way of doing it where you could get it and then either sell it or rent it or rent to own, but they go through multiples of those. And that was why it was critical to get it to become a 501c3, because obviously that's all in tax deductible. anything that anybody donates to the 501c3 is tax deductible. And there's provisions as there is in any 501c3, there's provisions that if it goes out of business, what happens to the assets and how it gets dissolved. But that's the concept. I've actually had 2 individuals that have called me once they found out we were doing this and have already asked if they could donate to it. Now, we didn't talk about sums, we didn't talk about anything like that. I don't necessarily care to be on the board. What my job was, I'm a CPA, so what my job was to get the organization constructed, and I've done that. I literally have gotten commitments from all 3 bank presidents to be on the board, which is one of the things that Bentonville told me that we needed to have happen. The ask of you, and when I talked to somebody on the commission, I can't remember which when I talked to you, I asked you at that point in time, what I would really love to have is at least one member of the Planning Commission on the board, because that then keeps the Planning Commission up to speed on what issues are arising, allows you all to be, as opposed to being separated from it, it allows you to be integrated with it. Now, I know the commissioners change and things like that, but I think it would be great to have somebody do it. I don't think it's going to take an immense amount of time. I think it'll take some time for the bankers, but in the first couple of years, it is going to take some time to get everything structured the way it needs to be structured and set some direction. And that's why I wanted Bentonville Bella Vista to come over here and say that, we tried this, it didn't work. We tried this, it didn't work. We tried this, it didn't work. But when we focused here, then we started to achieve things. And they've got a wide variety of things. They have rent-to-own projects. They have complete rent projects. They have sales. They do independent sales of property. All of it structured with low income. The other person I am trying to get on this board, which I think is very important, you all have probably heard Northwest Arkansas has all of a sudden gotten involved in low-income housing, or in housing, period. They've created another whole division, the group that the Walton Foundation put together. They've created another whole division that has nothing to do but housing. They hired a guy out of Colorado, and I have met him twice. He is nothing short of spectacular. He knows what he's doing. He knows where he's at, and I think he would be a good addition to the board if he thinks he has time to do it and it's not a conflict. But I'm not pushing too hard, because I want the people that are actually going to be involved in this to actually put the structure to it.
So what's your goal as far as when you want, are you looking at trying to have that accomplished within the next 6 months? Or
Yes.
Okay. So you're hoping for 2020?
I've been preoccupied with another project we got going on here, but that's where I'm trying to get us in a position of where we can get this thing up and running. You don't have people walk up and ask you to give you money very often. I don't want to turn them down. I want to be able to give them money. And these are obviously wealthy people, because they're the type of people that can use the tax deduction.
Mm-hmm. So you're hoping 2024 you've got an active...
By 2024, we're active right now. We're just not, everything's in place. There's nothing more structurally that needs to be done. We just need to start work.
Okay.
Okay?
Sandy?
The other thing about the CDC is we've had a couple of meetings with ADFA as well as HUD and the state director, and they work specifically well through 501c3s. They prefer that. So we've got a good relationship going with them as well for housing income. And on low-income housing, I think you probably all are aware that the mayor had Northwest Arkansas Economic Development Group do a survey of who's in poverty and low income, because the census, we feel, very, very greatly underreported what we have, and that has blocked us from CDB grants and other programs that are available through ADFA and HUD. We just can't apply for them. So we're hoping those results will come back and be a little bit more in our favor. Not that we want to boast low income, but it would help with affordable and workforce housing quite a bit.
So would you say that based on the two of you talking, you think you've got more opportunity with the 501c3 at this point than you do with the other, with HUD and some of the others?
It's one and the same. We will work with ADFA and HUD through the CDC.
Okay,
And HUD prefers that structure
okay,
to go through it. But the 501c3 just solves a whole bunch of problems. And it also is useful not only for housing, but it's useful for a lot of other economic development. Like a couple of the other projects we're working on with the, preservation, crafts and trade construction school that we want to put in an education thing, as well as a food production innovation hub to develop and market food products that are locally made in Eureka Springs. So it's a very broad umbrella. Our focus is housing first, and then expanding out to other things.
okay, so at this point, there are no projects that are active outside of trying to get that board up and running, so that you can then maneuver and figure out some additional things, correct?
Active meaning building?
Actually moving forward on a project.
No, there are a couple of smaller projects that are in the works, and one that's been looking at, I don't know if I should say, but an apartment complex in the Old Ramada Inn.
Okay, so
I don't
then.
know where that is, but there's some movement.
So then the question is, if someone from planning were to be involved in the 501c3, that's what I'm hearing Kent say, is that he'd like to have somebody from planning be on that particular board. And then we know that we've got, maybe we need to take a look at R3 zones and see, or others, and see if there are any areas where maybe we could rezone. What else do you, I mean, we're working on this, this FAR equation, how big of a house can you put on this size of a lot and whatnot? Can you have more than, one house on a lot? What does that allow us if we've got a 10,000 square foot lot and they've only got a 1,500 square foot home on it? Would somebody be able to do that? What else do you see like that you would need from
Before you
planning?
jump into their decision, let me also explain. When we talk about HUD housing,
Uh-huh.
cities cannot be involved in HUD.
No, I understand, but,
I mean, so we can't really, that's all the private individuals going out and doing something. And we met with, actually, I guess, one of the HUD representatives out of Fort Worth and also out of Little Rock. And so they're willing to do anything we can. And that's where this 501c3 can come up, because they can do something with that.
but you might also need to have an update on maybe some rezoning, correct?
Well, it certainly wouldn't hurt. I mean,
Right.
I was just looking on the zoning map, and I hadn't realized Miles Mountain was zoned agriculture,
Uh-huh.
or it looks like it.
There's quite a bit.
Some of the others are zoned agriculture too.
Right.
Of course, some of them are, typical Eureka, they're all straight downhill.
And it doesn't mean
But
that
it
that
doesn't
person's
mean-
going to sell the land either, but,
Yeah.
but,
So,
yeah,
yeah, there's no reason to have agriculture probably
right.
in the city.
I mean, that's kind of where this conversation started,
Yeah.
was that, we need
I
to,
think it'd be good to go ahead and get some of that resolved,
okay,
because somebody's going to look at Miles Mountain, it's going to be up and it's going to be bought.
right. And then the
That's a
other thing,
prime-
some of the other things is what we were talking, Kent, before we started this workshop, where we've got code that says you can have a mobile home, and then this is the zone you can have it in, and you have to have this many acres, and you can only depending upon how big it is, they have to be this many feet apart, and all of those things. In reality, some of the smaller homes out there, some of them do come in on wheels. Where do we categorize them? And what does the definition need to change in our code book so that it is, what is a mobile home? Is it the traditional mobile home, or is it something different in 2023?
Colorado and Utah have just gone through that same
Right.
process.
So if those types of things are important to help this project, not saying that, whatever you tell us, we'll go ahead and change it just because that's what you want. I mean, obviously, you can't do that. But whatever makes sense and will help that process, then that's what this conversation is about.
I think it's great.
So,
I think it's great.
So are there any, I mean, other than, we know we've got agriculture areas, we know we have some things still to do with your 501c3, are there any other things that you think that planning could help with?
You
I-
might seriously look, I mean, when you talk about mobile homes, they've changed a lot in the last 20 years.
Right.
I'm not sure it gets off enough sudden, but, you might look at some areas. I think it's like out of sight, out of mind. There's some spots like Valley View, or not Valley View, whatever the mobile home park is. Nobody knows it's there.
Right.
That's a perfect spot for it, for something like that. There may be some more spots out there that I'm not aware of that could be developed into, because those are prime, low-income housing.
And then the other thing too that we had talked about when we started this FAR conversation was what makes up a house? Is that a bathroom, a kitchen, a bedroom, a living space?
There's
Or,
some definitions for that, I
Yeah,
think. in the
there are.
building code.
I think there's some on that flash drive that I pulled.
okay, and then how many square feet? What would our minimum be for a square foot for, any size home? You have to have a minimum. If the lot allows you to put a maximum on there, then it doesn't really matter, but we should at least be able to establish a
Well,
minimum.
It's what you consider livable for the target audience, because you've got, you've got, and this is what we went round and round for a year on, is who are we doing housing for, and what do they need? And then comes in, what can they afford? And then the other thing that comes in is who's the developer that's going to build it
Right.
affordably? And that's a challenge. I mean, we had 3 or 4 people that we tried to convince to take some of the motels, convert those into, apartments and rental. And the cost, by the time you get just the sprinkler system,
Right.
you lose units because you have to do ADA compliant, you lose because you have to do some kind of kitchen. It just is astronomical. All of a sudden, it's back up to $1,200, $1,500 a month for the developer to make it. So our other long-term challenge is going to be to cultivate and nurture developers that will invest in Eureka Springs to provide that. So to your question, as far as what can planning do, I think this is a great first step, and having a planning seat on the CDC is going to be huge, because it will be an organic type of development that is much needed. I don't know how far you've gone with ADUs, and I know there are some that are allowed, but there's another opportunity there with it. And there's some city property that Butch is looking at to donate to the 501c3 that already has water and sewer, that the CDC can put a cap on rental and can put some restrictions on it, which is kind of what we're looking for as well.
The only other thing that I would say is, I know you're familiar with Strong Towns, so I've been reading over probably the last, 2-3 years on different articles that they have. But, some of the housing that different cities are implementing would be single person, so therefore the square footage is much, much smaller. No parking, so your parking requirements are completely different because they are dependent on city transportation, which would be our trolley system. Are you looking at those types of housing opportunities as well? Because obviously we have to abide by our parking guidelines. How much space do you need to have, and you can't park off street, you have to park in your lot. I mean, depending upon where we're looking. The trolleys only run certain days in the wintertime. Not that they don't run at all, but it's an abbreviated schedule. So I think it's 4 days a week during January, February, something like that. And then, a lot of our information says that if you're going to build an apartment complex, you have to have X number of parking places. That may not necessarily be true if the target is somebody who is single, has no vehicle, and will rely on city transportation. So
Oh, yeah, we looked at all of that, and
Okay.
that's what got us actually to some of the parcels of city land
Okay.
and other parcels in there, because that's ideal for workforce, where it's walkable, and you don't have to deal with, with parking. But, transportation is a whole different thing if we're talking
Right.
about workforce. So what we kind of settled on was we need to address our local problem first, and we started with rent, progressing to rent to own, and then providing other housing with it. And quite frankly, we think it's a county issue as much as it is a Eureka Springs issue. Everybody has the same problem all apart the country. But there may be other areas between Eureka Springs and Berryville that might be good for a complex that's maybe not fitting the Eureka style and maybe not as far out as Berryville, but there is accessible transportation for them to get to both cities to work. So, and as you know, Susan, with C3, we've worked with the county collaboration on housing issues and a lot of other different issues as well. So,
What would be, if you did, if something like that happened, say, within the next 5 years, if there was something between Eureka and Berryville, if someone came in and said, yes, we're willing to go ahead and do this, how would you solve the transportation issue? And I say that because, I see so many people that don't have transportation.
Well-
And that's kind of a dead zone out there.
hopefully, addition to our trolley system and our transit
Okay.
system that exists now,
Okay,
that would be the ideal thing. That's federal, as you know. So,
Right.
but I think because it's attached to housing and transportation is so critical to housing, that there's a good opportunity that there's more flexibility with that, more opportunity for that.
okay,
And if it's real low income, we have also met with Northwest Arkansas Economic Development in their workforce division services. And they have some programs that can provide transportation as well. You have to qualify for it, you have to stick with it, you have to show up
right.
and be dependable, or you lose it. But there is assistance out there for that
Okay.
population as well.
Okay, because, that's a biggie for so
It's
many
huge.
people, so, yeah,
And I
okay.
know in strong towns, they're talking about reducing parking requirements and everything, which is a great idea, because they're talking about, our ordinances, and Eureka Springs ordinances was based on, written in 1969, 68, and most of it was pulled out of some place like Fort Smith or Little Rock, because you can tell just by the size of it and the requirements. Unfortunately, and we just witnessed this with our legislature and the overnight lodging, short-term lodging, one of the things is if you get rid of parking, then that is one of the ways that you control short-term lodging. So if you get rid of parking, say, oh, well, we don't have to have parking for some of these small cottages, well, that invites somebody to come in and buy them, turn them into an overnight lodging. It won't do it right now, but possibly it's going to come up again in 2 years.
Well, and see,
So
that's
that's
why,
something just to keep in mind.
yeah, that's why that FAR calculation that we've been discussing is that, yes, you can calculate it based on the size of the home, but you can also calculate the total area that it would include a garage or parking. So, that would help us in that aspect, because they wouldn't be able to build a house that was too big for the lot and didn't allow for the parking if we
Well-
calculate that within.
Exactly, but when you're talking about eliminating parking, just keep that in mind for individual homes.
Right.
But there's no reason why you can't, on apartment complexes, multifamily, go ahead and reduce, I think we got, is it 1.5 parking spots per one bedroom?
Yeah, see, we need to look at some of that.
So a
That's-
two-bedroom is 3
yeah.
parking spots or something, so yeah, that might be able to change.
And maybe there's a category for a type of multifamily that is specific. Maybe it's named something different, but it's a single person, no vehicle, relies on public transportation. Whatever that ends up being, but maybe that's something that we need to look at, for that. At least have that option out there. Doesn't mean that somebody's going to come in and say, hey, I'm willing to go ahead and build it, but at least it's in code and you're not having to scramble when you need when you actually need it to be there. So maybe that's, all right, what else you got? Anybody have any questions for us?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say is recently, we talked about private-public partnerships as part of the development and also identifying the clientele that need the housing. Recently, there was an article in the paper about the Holly House being purchased by the Crescent Hotel for their employees. What do you guys think about that solution, I guess?
We encouraged it.
Okay.
In fact, we had that idea. That came out of the task force early on that, and actually it was started by Jeff Carter. He was the first one that bought a couple of houses for his employees and used them as perks for keeping chefs and stuff. And, the discussion that we had spurred a lot of individuals, private individuals, to take action on their own. And, you saw a couple of container households pop up after we started talking about containers.
Yep.
And the whole workforce development. There is a responsibility on the part of an employer to, particularly because it's so hard to keep help, and particularly in Eureka Springs, with the tourism economy. So it's a smart decision that I think would probably pay off in the long run if you take into consideration the cost of rehiring, advertising, retraining, all that stuff, and not having a guarantee that they're going to stick for 3 months or 2 months or 2 years, that if you offer them something that has a little bit more of a stipulation on it, makes sense. We love the idea.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, because I liked it too. I just been trying to get with Jack and get a tour of it and see what but it's really was a remarkable timing when it hit the press.
It was, and it's the perfect thing. It was an assisted living
Right.
facility, so it already had a lot of things built in, unlike if we could convert some of the motels, which would also be, ideal, but again, the developers, after they put pencil to paper, just decided
Right, there's a lot of
to
overhead.
do it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have a question. You guys are, what is it? Out there on 23, out by Acorns, where the old Autumn Breeze was. Are you familiar with what they're doing out there?
I'm not. They're,
Is-
they're,
Tourist lodging?
Is it, are they long-term rentals? It's going to be tourist lodging. I thought that was going to be something that was for long-term rental. Because I was thinking, it didn't look like the buildings were big enough for much, and I thought, well, maybe they're using a facility like a kitchen facility and a bathroom facility in the main building.
one of the things that we've talked about doing and need to do is figure out a way how to convert some of the short-term rental people to convert to long-term rental. I don't know if you all saw it. I think I sent it to Kyle, but Airbnb now, because supply is high, demand is lower, prices are going skyrocketed, people don't want to rent the entire house for that fee, so they're going to start pushing single rooms for $67 a night, which is not good for our lodging facilities here. But there's got to be a snap point for that, and how to educate them and convince them to convert some of their units, particularly those people from out of town. If we could get that public awareness or that private ownership awareness going, that would help a lot, because there's a ton of properties out there that would be far better used for long-term.
And then some of us were on planning together when Echo Village was built.
Yep.
So I know I know Ann, you were, I know Tom was, I know I was. If I remember correctly, there were homes that were going to be built there, and there was also going to be was it a separate men's, a separate woman's facility?
It was going to be for the mental health and homeless people, and it was going to be a communal thing, like they had a community center, and everybody was going to be given chores, and
Do y'all have any update on any, because I know that portion of it was never, or has not been completed yet.
Actually, they just completed the community room center. Downstairs is community area, upstairs is split into men and women's.
It is. And
Yeah, with separate showers.
Okay, but those are just like, those are just very short-term places, or are they
No,
permanent?
that's pretty much short-term. That's for
Okay.
more like homeless, short-term people. And they also have something out there, I think, for the veterans. And I think they also have something for, I want to say, the handicapped also.
So is that,
Behavioral health
so
issues.
is that facility then complete as what it
No.
was original? I
No,
mean,
they've-
I'm
they've
not on the
got-
number of homes, but,
It's a phased deal. I think they've gotten 15 units out there, but there's planned for 24 to 25 units total.
okay, but the facility that's there for the short term, that's now completed.
It's almost completed, if not
Okay.
completed, yeah. They just got through basically building it and getting ready to furnish it and everything.
And have they talked about doing anything that was more of a
Have they-
long-term rental which would be different from the homes as a smaller unit?
I'm not sure exactly what Susie and Dan's
I think
entire
they do.
plans
I
are.
think there are plans for another 30 units, I think.
Yeah.
But were they separate homes, or were they housed like, similar to apartment building?
Separate homes.
They're separate homes, okay.
Again, they're trying to get that step up
Yeah,
and out with semi-long-term
okay,
residential.
okay.
Yeah,
And so that's really it
Right.
for Eureka, right? For,
That's pretty much right.
That's it.
right.
And I think going along with what Sandy said, part of it is long-term rentals, and then part of it is also for people for short-term until they get their feet on the ground. Because, we have basically three types of homeless. I mean, we got our transients who are seasonal, they come and go, and a lot of them don't even want a place to stay. And then we have people who, for lack of reason, been evicted, and then we've got people who just have some mental issues also. But the ones who've been evicted but trying to get their feet on the ground, they've got housing out there for that, to keep them for like 2 to 3 months until they get jobs going and get back up on their feet.
okay, but the 501c3 is for, oh my gosh, we just don't have enough worker housing, or rent available between, whatever the number is, $600 to $1,000. That's what the 501c3 is focused on then?
It's really for all of the above.
Okay.
It's very brief. If you look at Bella Vista's, it's very broad.
Okay.
They go from everything from senior assisted living all the way to individual houses, to rent to home, to low income. So
Okay.
it really is supposed to cover the entire spectrum. It looks at the entire spectrum because they like this one wants to be in step with the city. So that they're doing the things that the city wants them to do overall.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll probably have a phase type of thing. You'll see in some of the information that we put on the jump drive what the affordability is, and it's Carroll County specific. What they can afford, what they make against their wage. So it's real easy to figure out what the affordability is and back into what the size of the house
I
is.
think I saw that on some of your information.
Yeah, what the size is and things like that, because that's where we had a great discussion about, okay, what do we build, what would we build if we could build it? What is the side? And we definitely want to take care of workforce housing first. That needs to be rental, we know that. But we also want to build in rent to own and get people committed to stay in Eureka Springs, stay at their job, and invest and get involved in the community. So that's the goal. And then as Kent said, the lower income is one opportunity that we can focus on, and the regular housing development that can be done.
What
But the
kinda-
incentives for developers as well as investors and donors are much greater through the 501c3 than any city can come up with, which is why the CDCs are
What kind of
delivering.
timeline is on a rent to own? I'm just curious. What kind of timeline is on a rent to own?
I haven't checked with them recently, but they had varying. They had people that they knew probably would never
Pay it off?
Would never get
Right.
it paid. It wasn't the objective to get it done quick. They had certain developments that were in fact accelerated so people could get into the home quicker. They do a lot of evaluation of income and need and things like that over there. So it kind of again goes to the range.
So is that done through their group, or is that done through the, in tandem with the financial institutions?
It's done within the 501c3 that they
Okay.
have. And as we've said, you've got a lot of different financing arms once you get up and running that can come in to support the 501c3 as opposed to a municipality. I mean, it's a corporation. It's just a nonprofit corporation. So
Okay.
So they can do anything that a corporation can do as long as they're not making a profit. And nobody's getting enriched they can make money, but they can't.
Because you've got limits on what your head can make
Yeah.
and all of that, right?
Yeah,
Is it-
no one individual
like
can.
50 or
Yeah, you can have
60?
employees, but nobody can get enriched from the earnings
Right.
of a 501c3.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the 501c3 because I was involved with one. I'm sure the rules have changed a little bit, but I was
Not
just.
much. It's
Okay.
really pretty much the same.
Tom?
In talking to HUD, I know they have the tax credit program, which is, every year. What other programs do they have right now that involve multifamily housing other than the tax credit?
All the HUD programs are on that flash drive, 'cause there's several, and ADFA, Arkansas Department of Finance Authority, also their programs are there, and they're all detailed in there. Also, some other loans, and I know Kent's used them effectively through USDA, and they work a lot with HUD as well. So there's rent assistance, there's housing assistance. Also on that flash drive, I don't know if you're aware that President Biden's affordable housing, as part of his budget, is in there. If that all gets passed without strings, there's a rural focus on it and workforce housing focus on it, so there's some potential there that we could tap into as well. Programs are out there. We just didn't have a mechanism to get them
Yeah.
until this 501c3.
Yeah. Well, Sandy and the team, Ken and Butch, you guys done a great job, but, I hate to, we've got a really problem. Tyson's letting go 1,000 employees at Van Buren next week. I was talking in Berryville yesterday about this to our congressman and our senator, and I think that's just a start. I think we're going to see a lot of large corporations letting people go, and they're going to be coming here for jobs. So we may have the employee problem solved, but we'll have the housing problem nowhere. So I just hope we don't have a tent city pop up here.
We do have, and just for your information, and Jacob reminded me, Quality Motel out there going to 62, which is a big U-shaped developer from Mountain Home bought that and is converting that into apartments.
Good.
So that's going to be about 40 to 50 units,
That'd be great.
apartments out there.
Timing's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
And, he's looking at some others too, so. But again, the biggest part we have is most of our motels aren't sprinkled.
Right. Yeah.
They're doing this up in Branson, they're converting them, but they're all sprinkled up there because they were built after the codes.
Yeah.
When they convert those, I mean, is there anything in code that says you have to provide more than? Because, some of those old hotel rooms, it's like you've got a bathroom and then somebody throws a little mini fridge in there for you and a microwave in there for you, and they say, hey, rent it for $500 a month.
I don't know.
I mean, that's out there.
Well, and we know that there are a couple of apartment buildings that have done that without adding kitchens or
Right.
ADA compliant. They just rent the room
Right.
on a long-term basis. And that's, it's a private company, so they can do what they want.
It's almost like a rooming house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A boarding house.
They exist all over Carroll County.
Right. So,
That's the one affordable thing, $87 a night or $350.
I mean, is it what we call a boarding house? Is it a boarding house?
Back in the day. Yeah.
I mean, we have that still in our code, don't we, or did we take that out?
But we're talking residential, I think she's talking commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
boarding
that's
house is
true, it's
still-
commercial, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Okay, I got you.
Now, one of
Okay.
the problems I ran into in Little Rock 20, 30 years ago, was they'd take some of these old mansions and they would rent out rooms, literally. for $20 a night. It's whatever, $140 a week or something, a room. And they'd take a beautiful two-story Victorian home that had, 20, 30 rooms in it and make it into 10 to 12 rooms. And that just created some other additional issues.
With the big staircase up the side, exterior,
The
and,
landlords that I knew down there carried guns when they went to collect rent.
Wow.
Interesting.
Because what you were doing was you were creating
Yeah,
not a real good environment.
yeah,
yeah.
that's what we don't want to do.
Does anybody else have any questions for any of them?
Just want to say thank you for this executive summary. It's quite
Quite
enlightening,
enlightening, yeah.
especially the profiles of housing.
Through the years, we've done, I can't tell you how much research. There's a ton on the flash drive. If you want anything else or need anybody to do research, holler at me.
I think I think this kind of gave us a feel for what we need to look at within code. And then, obviously, if we have any questions or whatever, we can always ask you to come back or even email just to verify that this would assist, this wouldn't assist, and kind of work that way. But I think some of these things, it's parking, it's, some of the areas that are agriculture, it's maybe rezoning some of that into, what is a mobile home park today as opposed to what was a mobile home park in 60-something? So,
And there are permanent mobile home parks and they're movable on fields.
yeah, exactly. So I think that
I just
helps
got to
us.
thinking that once I'm Rogers, that guy, the contractor's supposed to call me this week. I'm going to find out. I don't think they consider those mobile homes at all. They build them on site.
Yeah.
Tiny homes that are built on site, so they wouldn't be considered a mobile home.
Well, I know, the only reason I say that is because I know that we had a couple that came to planning and they were trying to do a couple tiny homes. Y'all probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But originally, I think, Kyle, they were hoping to roll them in, and then it was like, well, no, you have to take the wheels off. You have to permanently, put it on a slab and different things like that. So there's still some clarification that needs to be done within code so that somebody is perfectly clear as to what they can and cannot do.
I'm just hoping I can find out exactly what they are.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what they're doing right now.
Yeah, that'd be great too. But
Well, I know I had a food truck do exactly that, took off the wheels
On
and made it
62.
a building. So,
right. And when you think about it today as opposed to 5 years ago, was that really necessary? So I don't know. At the time it was, I guess, to comply with the code, but
Just to comment on a true mobile home, if it's not on a foundation, you can't finance it anymore.
okay, see, and
You can't-
there are those things
You
too.
can't bank finance it, so.
So it could be rented, but it wouldn't qualify for your rent to own. Yeah, okay. Okay, all right. Anybody else have any questions or?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. That was helpful. All right, so we've got about 10 minutes before the meeting starts, so.
that